Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time the question comes to us from Donald, who asked, "Hey Thor, I was interested to hear more of your take on how the world between worlds is portrayed here," speaking of the 5th episode of Ahsoka. "I have to say that I came away with a completely different interpretation of what actually happened than yours. Personally, I thought that Ahsoka being in the world between worlds was a theater of the mind type of deal, and that she's not actually there. That it's some sort of manifestation of her mind or a vision that she had when she was near death. This would also mean that the Anakin we see in this episode is a manifestation of all her thoughts and feelings about her former master rather than his Force ghost or something like that. It feels like a lot more plausible of an explanation to me. I guess Ahsoka is no stranger to being pulled into the world between worlds by others, but the way that Anakin acts here plays a lot different than what I would expect out of a Force ghost." Okay, so before getting into it, do note that a lot of what I'll be talking about here is speculation or inferred based off the little that Dave Filoni has actually said about the world between worlds. And some of this might get a little out there, but I think it's fun to speculate and try to figure this out, even if, as Filoni has all but said, he will never give us all the answers. He is intentionally not going to give them to us to keep this mysterious, and that it's also not impossible, if not kind of likely, that he himself doesn't have all the answers figured out just yet. All that said, and to even figure out if Ahsoka was really in the world between worlds or not, I think we have to try and figure out what exactly it even is and how it works. Keeping in mind we've actually seen it a couple more times before than some may even realize. That the first time we see it and someone access it is in Season 1 of Rebels, while in the Jedi Temple on Lothal, Ezra speaks to Yoda, seemingly through it, and then enters it and even receives a Kyber crystal while there. We then see it again in Season 2 of Rebels when, at the same temple on Lothal, Ezra again enters it and has a face-to-face conversation with Yoda this time. It also seems like the dream Ezra has in Season 4 shortly after the death of Kanan, the dream of the Doom Lothwolf, and I don't recall if Filoni has confirmed this or not, but that also seems like it could have taken place in the world between worlds. Meaning, at least for Ezra and Yoda, it doesn't seem that hard to access it or part of it without having to physically go through a portal or anything of the sort, which, yeah, we also see Ezra do later on. Though I do think this could have a lot more to do with Lothal, and specifically the Jedi Temple, than Ezra himself. That something about this location is strong with the Force, and for some reason makes it an easy place, relatively speaking, to sort of cross the threshold and enter it. And then on Yoda's end of the call, sitting on Dagobah, that's also a place strong with the Force, we know that. And so he can also use it to access the world between worlds if he knows what he's doing, which he clearly does. In other words, when it comes to Ahsoka and if she was really in there or not, keeping in mind that this place, these ancient ruins, also are likely strong with the Force, and that this is a Purgil gathering place, which likely means it has some significance, again, with the Force. Well, I'd argue it seems more likely, if not probable, that this isn't so much a theater of the mind moment as it is a part of Ahsoka actually being in the world between worlds, especially when you also consider she is sort of between life and death. Because what I think the world between worlds is simply a place between life and death, a place between the living Force and the cosmic Force, a sort of veil that exists between the two and separates them, or is perhaps even in a way sort of a convergence of the two. One that can be accessed in certain places by certain individuals, and to, in a sense, even defy time and space, like how Yoda and Ezra commune with each other across such great distances. Backing this up, then, is what we learned from the Force Priestess in the Yoda arc of Season 6 of Clone Wars, that there is a constant cycle between life and death, a constant cycle between the living Force and the cosmic Force, where when something in the living Force dies, it rejoins with the cosmic Force. And then when new life comes about, that life or that energy, going along with what Yoda told Luke about being luminous beings, which I think is his way of saying that we're just energy, essentially. We are all, or they are all, just the Force itself, the energy of it. Anyway, that energy comes forth from the cosmic Force to become new life within the living Force, and then this cycle just goes on and on and on. We even sort of see this cycle of life and death playing out on Mortis, which clearly has some sort of connection to the world between worlds, since they were, in a manner of speaking, they were the guardians of the portal to it on Lothal, or at least they were on the mural that was used to unlock said portal by Ezra. But what direct relation they may or may not have to the world between worlds, I think that's a good question for another time. Anyway, getting back to it, we know from George Lucas himself that when someone dies in the Star Wars galaxy, that they join with the cosmic Force and lose their consciousness or who they were. With the rare exception being the few who become Force ghosts, they retain their consciousness when they join with the cosmic Force and can even come back in the form of a spirit to the living force. But when everyone else dies and joins with the cosmic force, they lose all thoughts and memories and just become one with the force. They become one with this greater energy field. But I think, and this is where the fun speculating really begins, but I think when people die, and I mean anyone and everyone, I think they pass through this veil known as the world between worlds, and a part of them is perhaps left behind. Their memories essentially stay, and maybe something a little more in some rare cases. For example, that Doom Wolf we see in Rebels that talks to Ezra, that seems to be something left behind by Kanan. Now, it's not the real or actual Kanan, but a sort of remnant or echo of him. Ahsoka seems to confirm this, or at least the possibility of it, when she suggests during her encounter with Ezra in the world between worlds, that his will, Kanan's will, may have been strong enough to allow a part of him to come back. I even think all this could relate to what Ezra hears when he goes into the world between worlds via the portal, that he hears all these different voices and sees all these portals. These could be echoes of the dead, essentially, left over after crossing to the other side or into the cosmic force. Though the problem with this theory is that many of the voices Ezra hears at this point in time, or in relation to him, they are still alive, such as Leia, Yoda, and Obi-Wan, for example. However, I think, and it's pretty much obvious, I think that the world between worlds is non-linear. It exists outside of normal time and space, meaning that, though from Ezra's perspective none of them have died yet, they obviously eventually will, and that all things have sort of already happened and can be seen while in there, which is then why these portals exist. They connect to all sorts of different times and places, maybe infinitely so, and could even be the origin of force visions and premonitions, if we really wanted to start diving down some rabbit holes here. It also should be noted here that all the voices Ezra hears when he's in there, as well as what he sees through the portals, are all things that are related to him in some way, shape, or form, which Filoni has confirmed that's how it works, that while you're in there, you're going to be drawn to the things that have meaning to you personally. Not that you're going to just see a bunch of random things across time and space that have no meaning to you. And it's interesting to note that when Ahsoka was in there in the most recent episode of her series, she did not hear any voices or see any portals like Ezra did. And I think that is because, unlike Ezra, who physically entered it through a portal at the Jedi Temple on Lothal when he sees all the portals and hears the voices, that he was just visiting, I think Ahsoka was on the verge of passing through to the other side, which is all but confirmed by what Anakin says, that she is in a battle between life and death. I also think physically entering it, which Ezra does that one time, is, shall we say, frowned upon or potentially dangerous. I think there's a reason why Palpatine wanted to get in there, and it's because it seems to allow that person access to these portals, to access potentially all of time and space. And then also the ability to change things, like how he reached through a portal and grabbed Ahsoka out and into the world between worlds, which for some reason it does seem like that was supposed to happen, and from his perspective it actually already had. But even still, he was in a sense directed to do that by both the Doom Wolf who sent him there in the first place, and by Morai, who was in the world between worlds and directed him to the portal that he saved Ahsoka through. And again, these are all good questions for another time. And so going back to the question at hand, no, I don't think Ahsoka was physically in the world between worlds. I don't think she crossed through a portal, just like I don't think Ezra, the first few times we see him in there, was physically in there when he was communing with Yoda. Though how he got a Kyber crystal, well, I don't have an answer to that one. Basically, she was in there, but it wasn't her body this time. I think that the luminous being she truly is, that's what was in there while her body was, well, it was dead in the water. I think she was on her way again to the other side, to the cosmic force, when the genuine force ghost of Anakin Skywalker intervened and helped her find a way back to life. And I say that's the real Anakin, mainly because he did seem to know things that Ahsoka wouldn't or shouldn't have known, if this was instead just somehow a memory Ahsoka's manifesting. A memory of Anakin. For example, Ahsoka saying she wouldn't fight him, and Anakin replying that he's heard that before, was clearly referencing Luke's refusal to fight him in Return of the Jedi, which sure, I guess Luke could have told Ahsoka about that, but something tells me that's really meant to, with some subtlety, meant to convey to us, the audience, that this is indeed the real Anakin Skywalker, or the real Force ghost of him. Though I suppose it could also just be a sort of remnant that was created when he himself once crossed the threshold between life and death. But something again tells me this is the real Force ghost. That's what Filoni wants to imply, even if he's never going to come out and directly say it. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think. Was Ahsoka in the world between worlds? Was that the real Anakin? And how do you think the world between worlds works? What do you think it is? I would love to take some more questions on this one and do more videos on this topic. I think it's pretty fascinating. Either way, do leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.